Phil Davis, good to catch up.
Gerard, very good to be here. Thank you.
Now, you have warned us about the shifting sands of the AFL contracting space and how we're going to have to make the mental adjustment to much bigger numbers in the past. The peak moment is clearly Mac Andrew. I wonder what you thought when this landed last night.
It was very funny. I was just walking to dinner last night and I got a message from an ex-teammate who's out and about still playing. He goes, I hadn't watched Mac Andrew play very much, ... And I go, what's going on? Yes. He goes, just go and read the news. And I think it's a bit of everything, isn't it, really, in terms of we're getting a bit more sophisticated with how we contract, but we have to get more bullish because top-end talent is so hard to get. And once you get it, you can't risk it. And I think clubs are starting to take more risks than ever in taking long-term views to make sure that they keep the players that they think are going to be difference makers down the track.
So the mechanism is he already had a year to run, and then it's 5 with a 60-game trigger, Tom Morris was saying, which is just a straight-up 4 more. So you can take this, unless something catastrophic happens, it's going to be 9 years, and the figure being talked about is 12 million. What did you make of the mechanics of it?
Yeah, well, I was expecting a trigger. I was really interested to see if it was a player option or just a trigger or how it exactly worked. And I'm sure there's some semantics in that contract. But if Tom's correct there, it's really just as straightforward as it would get. I think if he's not playing 60 games in 5 years, then something's gone very wrong and would presume very highly likely to be his body, and that gives Gold Coast an out if his body goes really, really bad. So you can see how that works. To be fair, him playing 12 games a year will happen barring a disaster. So, it's basically, I view it as a 10-year deal, Gerard.
Yep.
It's strong conviction, and there's a lot of strong conviction going around. Just what I was touching on before is this is where it's really difficult at the moment. Clubs on the outside who don't have talent or want a certain talented player come in with these humongous offers because they can. There's a few clubs around at the moment playing with monopoly money, Gerard. They can't fill their salary cap and they're just throwing money around. And I always say there are 3 types, the 3 values I always found in football, Gerard. There's the value if you want to leave to someone else, the market value, and then what you get paid to stay.
Yes.
And generally, it went in that order in terms of most money. So most money to leave, the market value was in the middle somewhere, and then to stay, you took less money. But there's just so much pressure on clubs. We saw Sam Taylor get 8 years. Brett Daniels, well, I call it 8. So he got 7 plus his year to go. Brett Daniels got 7. So the deals are just continuing to go that way. But we just have to get used to it because the race for talent is, I think, unfortunately, what's going to happen, Gerard, is the bottom end players, those real depth players, they're going to be waiting for longer and probably going to get paid less.
So the big question I have is Mac Andrew this player?
It's an incredibly difficult question. Like, I see enormous potential, but I also have seen lots and lots of players his age develop in non-linear path. And that's the thing that makes it so difficult, is that I see everything in a player that is unique and special, but football is not that easy. And it's so hard to do that. But their conviction, they've seen him more than all of us. They know, first of all, when I see 9 years deal, I go, I hope he's super professional, because to play for that long, you have to dot the I's and cross the T's all the time. You have to be meticulous, because his body, we'll use 10 years, it's just easier for me. In 7 years' time, Gerard, his body's going to be hurting every day. And you've got to find a way to run that pattern. You can't, you've got to be very, very good. And then you move to, you need some luck. You need some luck to stay on the park. You can't, have a knee come across and hit you one day, or land on a foot. Alex Rance landed on a foot in 2019, never played again at the age of 29. So, and then obviously, the play. I see untapped potential there, and potential as big as there is in the game. However, it seems as though it's the biggest contract I've seen on potential ever.
So you tell me where I'm wrong here. So to be this contract, the biggest contract that the league's ever seen at 10 years, by the end of it, he has to have won multiple best and fairests, and he has to have at least half the time been in the top 3 of the BNF. I reckon he has to have been a 4-time All-Australian. He has to routinely be in the top 10 players in the competition, and he has to have been a key figure in a consistent top 4 team over a period of time. Not the whole 10 years, but a period of time. Is that too high a bar, or is that a fair bar to match the biggest contract we've ever seen?
That's a high bar. I think the thing and this is where the little bits of the contract become interesting. He's probably going to play through 2 more collective bargaining agreements, Gerard. So if he doesn't have triggers to go up, it's a bit like I think like the Ben Mackay contract without those triggers makes it doesn't look as big and how it's structured and all those things. So going forward, if this contract isn't tied to the CBA, it's not like, let's call it a percentage of the salary cap going forward, then the bar actually lowers because the value of this contract will actually drop as we go forward relatively. But let's say it's a fixed percentage of the salary cap forever, you're probably not too far wrong at all, Gerard.
Yeah.
I think it'll need to be it'll have to be not Marcus Bontempelli world, but like not too far from that. He'd probably have to be the best player for Gold Coast, I would have thought.
So what does it mean for the contracts of Harley Reid and Sam Darcy when they come up? It feels like there's just no number that couldn't be contemplated.
No, I think I've always had a sneaking suspicion that if they'll be the first 2 players that get offered $20 million in some capacity. Yeah, I just don't know how the contract looks. It might be 12 years for $20 million, but that doesn't mean they'll sign that one, Gerard. That will be the offer to leave. But no, the scary thing is that we keep on getting a new bar set all the time, but for different types of players. So Sam Taylor comes out and sets the bar as the highest ever key back to ever do it. So now we've got the bar for that. So if you think you're the best key back or you want to peg yourself to the best, we've now got a new price. Now we've got a new price. If you think you are a potential star, this is the new bar. So, for example, Finn Callahan comes out of contract at the end of next year. I would think if I was his manager, I've got a good thing to peg it against now. That's how I view it now. We're just getting new places to peg where everything goes. And if you're Harley Reid and Sam Darcy, you've got some big decisions to make in the long term. And the one thing I will say is with these contracts, and like Max seems like he's going to be a very good player, there's pressure. A bit like what you said you expect him to achieve. That you are now officially a marquee player. They use that tag, obviously, in America. We have them, but they just work. We don't actually come out and say that. You are now the face of the franchise. You're expected to be delivering good and bad, and that's what you sign up for. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with that.
So that's the contract side of things. The other story last night sent a cold chill down a few spines. It's the hamstring injury to Callum Mills, which was suffered at training. It was scanned. It's a minor strain. He has been ruled out of the preliminary final, and it puts him just on an awful path toward a grand final. September 10 is when he did the injury. September 28 is when the grand final is. So any way you cut this up for the Swans, skipper Phil, it's just awful.
Yeah, he's had a tough year from an injury point of view. 18 days is tight, Gerard. We grade hamstrings, Gerard, sort of 1, 2, and 3. If it's a grade 1, which it sounds like it is, generally, you might be able to miss 2 weeks and play the third. So that would be play on the 21 days. But a lot of the time you actually miss 21 days, so then you miss 3, play on the 4th. So because the worst thing is he did on a Tuesday, so he's cost himself 4 days. And these are the little, and I presume there's one more grade there, Joe. They sometimes used to call it a grade half if you've bled through your hamstring.
Yep.
And that can be like 10 to 15 days. So that would immediately rule him out of the prelim, but he'd be a chance for the grand final. That's obviously the semantics in terms of we're in the weeds there, Gerard, but the more global principle here is it's devastating. His stress level would be enormous. You know, I remember my 2019 prelim moment, Gerard, when I got through the game, I knew something was a bit wrong. I didn't know how bad it was. You go into that scan machine and you are so scared about what it's going to say. You hop in and you have no idea, and you live on your phone after that, waiting for the doctor to call on that phone call. I was lucky, Joe, because I asked for never to be told. I said, "Don't tell me. You just work out what we're doing, and then if I get there, I get there." But Callum's got enough time to work out what he's doing. They'll throw everything at it. The thing that's in the back of my mind a little bit, Gerard, is the Sam Reid groin of 2022, and what, let's say they get there, John Longmire's appetite to take any form of risk into a grand final.
Yeah. That has to play a big part. So they've played a lot of footy without Callum Mills and a lot of good footy, and he was really shaky in the qualifying final. So where he is interesting, but just the overall being the captain, and everyone's lived his journey on the way back. How unsettling would that be when you earn the week off, you just want things to run smoothly?
There's no worse news at a football club than when someone gets injured at training. It is flattening. They've got time. The week off will help them rush that off. But let's say they were playing this weekend. I think it can be really, especially a captain, and they obviously rate him so highly. That would have been really destabilising. But yeah, someone who had training. It's actually the reason why with the AFLW with Chloe Malloy, I understood. I'm not sure when the Swans found out that, but for me, Chloe's the best player. She hurts herself at training. I don't want to find that out just before I play, because it has bigger ramifications. But in this circumstance, it's obviously slightly different, but it's still destabilising because it is deflating. It's like, oh gosh, we just got Callum back. Here we go. Oh, we've lost him. But then you do what you did, Gerard, and you start telling yourself, hey, we had a great year without him. We obviously would love to have him, but we've shown that we can do this, and this. No, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. So it just need a little bit of time to change the language in your head about the sort of ramifications of such an incident.
Phil, you were in the stands on Saturday at the SCG. It was one of the more pulsating environments I've ever been in. We were up a little bit higher than you. Separate to how it finished from a Giants perspective, what was it like? How big a moment was it in the Harbour City for footy?
Yeah, I was saying on the weekend, I was fortunate enough to be at the Swans Collingwood preliminary final 2022. This felt better, Gerard, and I know a lot of Collingwood fans came up, and maybe it felt better because I was like emotionally invested in the game, if I could still be, and it was just amazing. It was the best atmosphere I've been sort of a part of in Sydney. I think it was a landmark moment for multiple reasons. Sellout. There were 10,000 Giants fans, it felt like, out of the 40. It had a really good back and forth between the fan bases as both fans surged. And the quality of the product was just outstanding. And by far the best game of finals on the weekend, which actually made it, the landmark game of the weekend, which I think is actually significant when you think about football in New South Wales. Everyone will, let's say we reflect on 2023, 24, we'll all remember the epic qualifying final at the SCG between the two Sydney teams, which I think is significant when you draw on history, recent history.
There was a piece written yesterday out of Sydney as not only why the AFL should desire an all-Sydney grand final, but why sort of it needs an all-Sydney grand final. So it's got a few minds ticking over north of the border.
No, it does. I just think, we're talking about generational change when we talk about these expansion states. I think, Southeast Queensland's a bit of a different discussion point. There's some history there. I think the Bears played at Carrara a few times, and so there's a bit of history there. Swans came up 40 years ago, and they're really getting going now. 40 years. Some would argue that's one generation. Some would argue that's two. Giants are 14 years. Yeah, 14th year. We're talking generational. So all these moments are significant to capture attention and bring people into our game, which is the fundamental catalyst for growth. And things such as an all-Sydney Grand Final, you can't not talk about that. And those moments become very, very significant when you talk about landmark moments of where the game's going. And hopefully, we should all sit at home and be like, this game is so good, let's share it with everyone. How do we share it with everyone?
It was littered with highlights. I did feel so the cameras captured you after Cal Wars. Probably the greatest individual moment of his career. Would we say that?
He's had two others, I reckon, Gerard. He kicked the left foot first goal ever of the Giants. And he kicked, I think, the sealer in the 2016 semi-final on his left, but nothing like that. I hope everyone can remember. I can remember his face. When I didn't realise, I got all these messages, Gerard. You've been on TV. I was like, oh no, what was I doing? I think just before they cut to me, they would have seen me laughing because he can kick those goals. Like, that's what he can do. But I think he surprised himself that he cut inside two players and kick a check side goal, and I was laughing. It was just the problem was, Gerard, at that moment I thought it was game over.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was game over two times after Pete Ling snapped and then that one. But no, the Cal Ward goal, Gerard, I was laughing. I was with my good mate Adam Tomlinson and we were just having a good laugh at that. And it was an amazing moment in a big moment.
So what sort of pain would the Giants have had to work through, having lost from a winning position a couple of times?
Yeah, that was incredibly tough. When I was talking to a few of the players, that was a tough one because my individual opinion is they haven't played that well since opening round. It's been that long since they'd played at that intensity with that sort of focus, no lack of concentration, just pure intensity for 3 quarters. And they could have got to 40 points up, it felt like at times, and that would have broken the Camel's back. But they couldn't quite do it, which on the flip side, kudos to the Swans for just hanging tough. They couldn't get their game going. They were being stifled. So to lose that would have been, absolutely gut-wrenching. However, the great thing about finals is you're just straight into it. Let's go. We can't lament it. We get Brisbane this weekend. We have to go. We can't be, oh, no. Regular season, sometimes you're like, oh, he's threw away the best opportunity and the game sneaks up on you and maybe you're not quite right. This is immediately after the game. We will address what we did wrong. However, Brisbane, 7 days. Let's go.
Yep.
So that's the one advantage of the final is that you can't, and if you do, you get blown out the next week.
All right, so Brisbane again, which does stir memories of the 2019 semi-final. What comes to mind? Is Brent Daniels winner at the 28-minute mark in one of the more rough and tumble finals? Yeah,
I think I saw a KO mini or something the other day about it. It was very funny just watching that game. I remember we got off this amazing start and then just silly. We just gave up the silly goals and then it was just goal for goal. And then Sam Reid's throw on the outer side to get the ball going to Harry Himmelberg, which ended up in Brent Daniels. So, yes, very fond memories, particularly of that play. I do remember, actually, one of my things is Stephen Martin absolutely dominated. And I just remember being in the back line being like, can someone please stop him? He's had about 400 clearances. So between Brent Daniels and Stephen Martin, that's sort of how I think about that game, Joe.
How do you think it'll pan out on Saturday in Sydney?
Yeah, we talk about questions sometimes. My question is which Brisbane's going to show up and for how long? I still am of the belief that Brisbane's best football is arguably the best, but their floor is the lowest of the teams left in it. Like they're wildly inconsistent. I think we can all step aside and say the weekend was 60-0 up. All right. I do not want to get hurt for a semi-final. So I'm not talking about that so much. I'm even reflecting back on the last time the Giants and Brisbane met. They could have been 50-0 up at halftime. Didn't kick straight, left the door ajar, and then their game fell away throughout the door. The other one, the big one for me, Jared, is Jack Payne. That is a big watch for me, Jack Payne. I watched that incident. I've got no idea what he did. So I hope he's okay. I think it's always better when the best players are on the field, but that's a big watch because Jesse's an issue for them if he doesn't get up. Jesse Hogan's an issue if he doesn't get up. And then on the Giants side, it's really I think they've found the formula again, Gerard. Now it's like, can we do it again after such heartache? And that'll be their big test. Is we now know we've definitely got it. I think a lot of they would have been like, I think we've got it. I think we've got it. I think we're capable of doing that. They now know it. But can they play in the fear of a knockout game and after heartbreak and deliver it?
All right, so that's Saturday night. If we come back to Friday night, I had your words ringing in my ears while we were watching Port Adelaide really disgrace themselves on home soil in the qualifying final. He said, sort of, don't get in your own way, don't get in your own heads. It looked for all the world like they did.
Yeah, that was to me the most disappointing performance of the first week of finals. I think they had it there. It was all set up. They're unlucky that at the same time as they're getting ready, there's a man called Chris Scott across the border scheming for 2 weeks, which is not good for anyone. So whoever wins the Brisbane Giants thing, they've got that waiting for them. But no, it was disappointing on lots of fronts. We spoke about, could the Datsuns keep up with the Ferraris? And the Datsuns did a well and truly good number on them. And now we get to see what what I see as a young midfield, can they bounce back? They are the barometer of that team. They are the core of that team. And now it's like, can that football club deal with doubt? And this is not just doubt now, Gerard, of like just losing a game. I think we all know the ramifications of a loss, or I think we all can presume what the ramifications of a loss is. And players aren't oblivious to this. Players are very much well in tune to the rhythms of what this stuff is. Young players, maybe not, like 18, 19, 20. But the commentary around the football club, and Ken obviously particularly, has been consistent for so long. That adds such a layer of pressure. So can they handle that?
How do you go about it inside the four walls? Connor Rozee is a young captain who's not playing very well. Zach Butters is banged up, so he's got his own issues to deal with. It's got to be challenging, doesn't it?
Oh, incredibly challenging. So Connor Rosie's going to have to go through this process where you just put on a mask. Hey, talk about doubt, Gerard, he would have the biggest doubt ever. He's not playing well at the moment. He's a young captain thinking, I have to lead the way, I'm letting the team down. So this is all the internal dialogue at the same time. But outwardly facing, he goes, guys, we finished second for a reason. We are a fantastic, fantastic team. We know what we're going to do. We got the Hawks last time they came to Adelaide. It was a classic, but we got them. We can do this. We're this. You have to be so positive, and it can actually be beneficial for your own game when you go around. You go, hey Zach, if you get up, you're the most dynamic midfielder in the game, and no one can stop you. Hey, Mitch Georgiades, you're one of the cleanest, best forwards. You get out of yourself by going around and forcing your will of positivity into them. There's no point. I don't think there's any point. They don't need to be like, aback with how they're talking. They have to be like, we're a good team. Everyone, we are a good team. Because this is a point, coaches are terrified of complacency during the year. They want belief, but not tipping over into complacency. At this point in time, in this moment, you've got to push that envelope on belief and positivity, because that doubt would be so loud in everyone's head.
Hawthorn passed their first finals assignments in a breeze. What sits over them in your mind going to Adelaide?
They're at the other end of the spectrum, Gerard. They are playing as free as I've seen. That performance was the most complete performance of the weekend. I thought when I was watching that game, and I was like, oh, come on, the doggies will get going here. And there's a few things on the doggy side that's obviously been critiqued already. But I was enamoured with the Hawks and how they played. They played finals football with freedom. It was exhilarating to watch. And so they're going over to Adelaide, where they were well in front of Port early in the year. They would have learnt a lot of lessons from that loss. And they're just free, Joe. Talk about doubt. They are so far from that at the moment. They're just rolling. The only little slither of discussion is the frost out for Sarong. And that's purely, I'm sure we could pick apart the two players, their differences a lot. But it's system. It's that the continuity of Sam playing every game this year, you pull that figure out, a new person's in there, it just slightly changes the dynamic. I don't think it's overly material in it all, but it's just when you just keep playing the same players every week, you start to know where they are, what they do, how they do, and this is just a slightly new unknown commodity that's going to slide in.
It's a great setup, Phil. A lot of interesting footy ahead. Enjoy it. Will you be in Sydney?
Yeah, I'll be there Saturday night.
Yep. All right. I'll see you up there.